Welcome into another edition of Mix and Water Monday. Joining us today is former Gamecock tight end Jacob August. And Jacob, another win for South Carolina. 3 wins in a row, a big one at that, being able to take down Kentucky in Lexington, a place they hadn't won at in 10 years. To be able to do that, number one, what can this do for this team heading into the bye week as they now improve to 4-2 on the year?
I mean, first of all, Mike, thanks for having me. But, I think it's massive. There's no secret that Kentucky's been that monkey on our back. And, to go into Lexington and get a win from them, I think is massive for this organization, massive for the club. And, I think that this is this was a necessary step that the Gamecocks needed to take in order to get to that, next phase in this program's history. And, I think, I can't say enough about how Beamer got these guys prepared. I can't say enough about how the defense played, and the special teams really carried us again. So I think it's massive for the organization, and I think I'm very excited to see what happens next.
You mentioned the defense. I know you're a tight end. We'll talk about the offense in a little bit because I feel like all season long it's offense that people want to talk about, and I get it. But I mean, from a defensive standpoint, to see the freshmen out there, whether it be DQ Smith from Spring Valley or whether it be Nick Emanwuri, another freshman out there playing safety and just doing an outstanding job. When you see so many young players out there, Jacob, what does this do for the future of this program? Because I know we like to live in the present, and I understand that, right? We want to see, okay, right now they're 4-2. What can they do this year? Can they go to a bowl game? Can they do this? Can they do that? But in terms of trying to build something, because you've gone through it before, you've seen it, different coaches come in, this and that. Yeah. What can that do, though, when so many younger players are making an impact right away in terms of trying to be able to continue to build this foundation for this program in just year 2 under Shane Beamer?
Yeah, I mean, I think it makes them fearless. It's, when you've been in a football team so long, you start to see that there's certain hurdles that you need to get over. And, when you're young, you definitely have a sense of, being naive. So to go into a hostile environment like Kentucky, I mean, they were 4-1, top 15 in the country. I mean, very similar to my senior year when they were 5-0, top 20 team. And it was, Kentucky's never been the biggest stadium that I've ever played in, but when they're good, that place is bumping. So, for them to go in and, silence the haters and put a performance up there like they did, on Saturday, I think it's awesome because these kids are not going to go in saying, hey, we can do anything. We beat a top 15 team on the road. What can't we do? So I think it's massive for this organization for sure.
Was there anything in particular that you noticed about the offense that was just different in the second half? Because it looked like it reminded me a lot of the 2017-2018 season, that Outback Bowl year, right? I mean, offensive standpoint, not really able to move the ball against Michigan. And in the second half, Jake Bentley and the offense, they were just cruising.
Yeah.
It just reminded me a lot of that game in particular.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good point. The biggest thing I noticed was, a few things. The first was that, just like you said, they were humming, right? The play started coming together. They started moving forward. It was definitely a second half that we looked and say, okay, this is what this offense can be, right? And that's really exciting to see. Again, I can't say enough about going into a hostile environment and playing a game like the game that they played, or at least the second half that they played. I think as Spencer continues to play in this offense and continues to get an understanding of what Marcus Satterfield's looking like is when you're gonna really see him take his strides. I think that Spencer Rattler's it has nothing to do with his ability. It has everything to do with up here. I mean, when you see him rolling out to the left and there's a wide open guy on a third down and, he throws it at his feet, that has nothing to do with his ability, right? So the second half kind of, solved – it felt like he kind of started hitting stride a little bit, and it kind of seemed like there was a little click there where it was like, okay, this is how the offense needs to run. I don't really need to think as much. I can just play. So if they can continue to, do that, continue to build around Spencer, I always said that, getting a guy like Spencer Rattler wasn't necessarily going to be the solution, but it now meant that he was never going to be the problem anymore, quarterback. So if we can continue to call those plays like we did in the second half, I think that there's going to be a continual growth in this in this football team.
Is there anything that you notice that they can do? I don't even say want to say do differently, but to put him in the best position to succeed. I know Marcus Lattimore mentioned when we had him on last week about being able to get him out of the pocket. It feels like he makes most of his plays when he's out of the pocket in comparison to being, a pocket passer, if you will. Is there anything that stands out to you, Jacob?
Well, and again, no fault to anybody, but one of the things I noticed was the playbook was a little complicated, and and that's why you've seen it take so long for the offense to get comfortable with it. And by all means, if the second half was that step over the hump that they were looking for and things start to click, that's entirely possible, and that's the risk you take with implementing a complicated playbook. But I just remember with Spurrier. I mean, when he handed us a playbook, it's like 23 pages. I mean, it was like 8 runs, and we ran these things called they call it the menu. So menu 1 through 10, menu 1, menu 2, menu 3, all the way through 10, and then we had some a few special plays here and there. But it wasn't difficult to understand. It was complexity through simplicity, and it was just a lot easier for people to retain and understand what we were doing on offense. I think with this offense currently, it's taken a lot longer for these kids to adapt and to adjust it. Because remember, these are only 18 to 22-year-old kids. It takes a while to understand, the collegiate concept of football. So I think, again, because it's complex, it's going to take a little longer for them to understand, especially with a new quarterback and then, new tight end and, a lot of transfers coming in. But if they can, get over that hump like we think they did in the second half, I think that's huge. But again, every game matters, and we and especially you in media like to look overanalyze every little thing. So the next game is going to be just as important as the last one. So we'll see, and see how it goes from there.
Is it as difficult as just trying to put your phone down when trying to block out the outside noise? And what I mean by that is, look, even though South Carolina has a 3-game winning streak, it still feels like people are, some are calling for the head of the offensive coordinator, or some are saying this and that. And I bring up the offensive coordinator in general, but this can be anything, right? This could be the fact that they're on a 3-game winning streak. What helps you during that time period in terms of trying to disconnect? Because it feels like it's impossible because everyone has one of these. You're on campus. People say stuff, I'm sure. I mean, do you have memories of people, whether it be a coach, whether it be, something students didn't like that was going on with the program, and they would come up to you and say something? I mean, like, how do you disconnect from that so that you can stay focused? Because I'm sure it's really easy to keep hearing things and it can influence you a little bit.
I think that's $1 million question, right? Not just in football, but in life. Whenever you're having success, how do you not make sure that outside noise is coming in and distracting you? So, I mean, what I did was I deleted social media whenever I felt like it was becoming too much. I would just delete it and focus on myself and focus on football, and But I think now with the NIL and the idea of you always being connected and always having a presence on social media has definitely changed some things that you can't really ask these kids to turn off their social media. So I mean, it's just finding that sense of maturity of, hey, listen, here's what's happening in this program. We're 4-2. We just beat a top 15 team. Things are going to start moving a little bit as we continue to play better, right? Beamer needs to do a good job, and I'm sure he is, but he needs to continue to be that, that light at the end of the tunnel saying, hey, this is where you need to go. This is what we need to do. This is what you need to stay away from. So, that's where leadership comes into play and saying, hey, this stuff's going to happen, but how do we handle it? So, these again, I always have to remind these people, these are just kids, right? You have to be able to guide them in understanding what's important, what isn't. And if you can have a leader like Beamer, and you can have a leader like Satterfield and White, then they should be the ones who are guiding you in the right direction so that you can make the next best decision as a young adult.
Give people an idea of what goes on during a bye week. as you get ready now for Texas A&M on the flip side of it, when do you turn your attention to the Aggies, and when do you, or how do you kind of just go about the first couple of days of that off week?
I'll tell you what, man, that bye week is one of the best weeks of the year.
Especially right now, midway through the season. I mean,
Yeah,
everyone,
massive.
we've seen it. We've seen it with the injuries. I mean, everyone across the country is dealing with some type of injury or they're banged up to some extent. But especially for South Carolina, it feels like the off week could not have come at a better time.
Yeah, I mean, you said it best. I mean, just give these kids a chance to recover. I mean, if it, we've definitely had our cupcake games in the beginning of the year. So getting this opportunity to kind of reset our bodies and get that confidence from this last game going into the bye week, I think is going to be massive. It really depends on the coach, but generally speaking, we would practice probably 3 days, maybe 4 days on the bye week. You would devote probably half of 2 practices, spending some time on the next opponent, so Texas A&M, and you're just looking over their scheme, seeing exactly what they like, what they don't like, their tendencies, seeing it right in front of you in a practice view. So you'd be going over things like that, watching film. But from a coach's perspective, I know that this was an opportunity for them to not only look at A&M, but they would get a little extra time to look at the opponents in the future, right? Give them an extra opportunity to see, what exactly is out there, who we're playing down the road, what do they look like in these first 5 or 6 games. So, there's massive advantages to a player because it gives you a chance to disconnect and, reset and recover and spend some extra hours in the training room and even get, a couple extra lifts in. But, from a coach's perspective, they're full steam ahead. They're already looking into, these next, 6, 7 weeks and seeing what they can do to position themselves the right way to be successful.
You mentioned that, and just a heads up for everybody, Texas A&M, of course, is the next opponent. That game will take place on October 22nd, which means there'll be just an absolute zoo in Columbia that day because you also have the State Fair in town. Then you also have Missouri the following week, and then it's back on the road at Vandy, at Florida, Tennessee back at home for the final home game on the 19th, and then you close out the year at Clemson. So just to look ahead a little bit, South Carolina looks to secure 2 more wins to be able to become bowl eligible once more. But of course, all the attention right now is, like Jacob said, get healthy and get ready to take on a Texas A&M team who, let's just call it for what it is. They kicked your teeth in last year. And I'm sure a lot of those Gamecock players and coaches are going to remember that and use anything they can for added motivation heading into that game. Jacob, appreciate you taking the time, bud.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me. Always fun doing this with you.